Here we go. So we are continuing our adventures of the LOK, which is a fantasy book by a former NFL football player turned nerd who plays D&D and writes fantasy books, as well as writes for other game companies. And I have met him in person at our conventions. I have pictures of him. He is a lovely gentleman. He is a great motivational speaker for a writer's block panel that I attended at the last convention. So I'll switch over to him on occasion, but I'll try and keep it on Stream Raiders. So I will pay attention to what we're doing, at least when it comes to game-wise. Maybe I can get through a page. We'll see. Alright. See if I can get through some of this in 4 minutes. So we left Walker trying to escape from the Icewell prison. Magic-hardened fists pummeled the first and second waves of ogres before their dim senses realized that they were in a losing battle. Caught between the desperate whips of their masters, the edges of the bridge, and the uncertain death of the warriors smashing through their lines, the ogres started to panic. Their toxins were running out of the maddening effect that they had while in full frenzy. Some tried to flee, only to be driven back into the raging Spartan warrior, while others were pushed off the bridge by their own dim-witted brethren, falling into the depths of the chasm below. The alpha of the brutes, a hulking, muscled beast, had gotten stuck in the middle of the press and had been knocked aside by the earlier explosion. He had finally gotten back to the maddened mob and was bellowing at his lesser kin to fight. He had been caught in the blast and had been hit hard, but that only angered him, and he was taking it out on his kin. The beast was noticeably bigger than the others. It wore a steel chest plate and boots and had wires that ran from his helmet to a pack on his back. His tree-sized muscular arms were covered in armor ending in mace, like metal fists. His muscles jerked as the wires pulsed, lending the huge monster even more strength. His veins pulsated from the shocks he was receiving from the apparatus, the armor barely containing the muscle beneath. The thing bellowed, frustrated at not being able to kill anything yet, his chest rising and falling with his angered, labored breaths. He could take no more. A guttural yell erupted from the thing as he crashed through his kin. The yell cowed the other ogres, and they parted for their alpha. Walker, realizing the ogres were backing away, turned to face the beast. The alpha watched him through the eye slit of his helmet as saliva filled his mouth and drool ran from his lips. The beast beat the floor with his mace-covered hands, snarled and charged toward Walker through the mass. He threw the others aside, knocking them out of his path as a fitful child would its toys. Walker yelled and readied to meet him. The emissary had finally been able to get to his feet. He was woozy and holding his head. He looked up, hearing a thunder crack of metal, and he dove out of the way as a huge armored ogre sailed past him. The ogre landed with a clang and a thud as it hit the far wall of the prison, slumping to the floor. Its steel armor plate was buckled, and its headgear was fizzling. The emissary looked at the armor. A fist print was indented in the chest plate. Then he looked back to the bridge and the battle. The Ulfwan were running. Walker had delivered a magna strike to the ogre brute, but the steel armor and runes, with the steel armor and runes enhancing his blows. The power of it threw the ogre against the wall. With the alpha down, the fury of the other ogres waned. The taskmasters that hadn't been killed from the blast had regained themselves. They saw the ogres run and tried to stop the retreat, but their whips did little now. Most were crushed as the creatures batted them aside, running for the doors, their brains realizing they were finally free of the dreaded place. The emissary watched his army dissolve as the last of the ogres went running into the snow outside. Walker was standing in the middle of bodies and debris. He looked up, his tired, haunted eyes catching the emissaries. A bluish light spread into the floor, pulsing out around him, as Walker released most of his power through the tattoo marks, though the tattoo marks remained. He was bleeding and breathing heavily, hurting and bruised. The battle had taken a toll on him, but he was almost free of this place as well. There was nothing left between him and the emissary, though he was still on the bridge. Alright, if we have help with the rogues. Hi, Fiendish Yet. I am actually in my room tonight and not near the kitchen where I can get some lychee treat. So I will redeem your points, or we can save them for another time when I'm actually streaming near some lychee. But I will give you some confetti in the meantime, since I can't give you lychee today. Of hastening these guys. Oops. Sorry. Curious, I saw your shinobi over here. I don't know if that would have helped. We'll see. Good luck. It's also almost 1 o'clock in the morning, so I think the sugar might not let me go to sleep at this point. But I am gonna hydrate at least. Woohoo! We won that battle. And got 5 keys. So 8 bonus. Yeah, especially now that I switched over to the reading. And I'm still talking quite a bit, but so. Alright, more defense. 30% more damage for the epics, which I wholeheartedly endorse. Warrior attacks slow nearby movement and attack speed 35 for 4 seconds. I don't know if that's enough, so I will go for the epics. Beep. We do well and they punish us with good stuff. Oh, I got the healing. Thank you for helping me with the healing. Oh, and my Templar is no longer exhausted. He took a nap. He has been refreshed. The emissary was shocked after almost being flattened by the ogre alpha. How is that Spartan still alive? He thought. Then it hit him that his forces were gone or dead. Sweat ran from his purple skin. His dark attire was soaked with it. He didn't know what to do as he looked around. His death was in front of him on the bridge. The bridge, yes, he thought. He managed to stagger to his feet, then found his footing and ran to the control mechanism. When he reached it, he slammed his hand down on the button. With a clack, the middle sections of the bridge disconnected and pulled away from each other. It compressed like a trick sword at a carnival, the bridge house closing towards the walls of the chasm. Walker lurched as it closed. He had to hurry before it was too far to jump. He reached out with his hand, and using the magnus, he held the farthest side of the bridge open, the gears and servos whining as they pulled against his invisible magnetic force. He ran to the edge and leapt, soaring magnetically toward the other side. His hand was outstretched, holding the bridge against its will, its gears groaning under the pressure. Walker released his hold, and with a clang he landed in a crouch, then stood as the bridge pulled him toward the emissary. Walker looked right at the alien and watched a man's fear swell. The bridge ends clacked in place, the echo resounding around the emptied prison. The emissary didn't know what to do. Everything around him was in ruins. He had allowed one of the mightiest fortresses on the planet of Partha to be taken from the inside. He hadn't listened to the Holdmaster when they had talked. The old man had been right. With despair in his eyes, he watched the Spartan come for him. He knew he was dead. Either this warrior or Lord Nemser would be his end. One would have him, and he knew it. He could run, for he had a head start, but it would be for naught. Better this man than the dread of waiting for his master. He knew the Spartan was weak. He had fought them before, and could tell this one was fading and injured. He thought he might have a chance if he took the warrior by surprise, but he had to gain an advantage. The emissary walked toward Walker while clapping his hands, acting as if he was amused by the man who had just crushed his army single-handedly. Walker looked like death coming for its next victim, his Magnus mark still covering him. However, to the Rasium's credit, he did not falter. Even after seeing Walker up close, he kept his act up, though he didn't feel nearly as confident as he acted. As he neared, he drew his slender double-edged fencing saber in grim salute. "You think this is over, Spartan? You want me to hand you my sword and surrender? This has only begun. You don't know what comes for you," he spat. "I will watch you die, and then I will deliver your head to my lord for show. I will get a promotion for this." He tried to chuckle, though his voice was starting to give way to his fear. Walker was exhausted and in pain. He felt the broken ribs from the rockets, and his arm and face were bruised purple from fighting the Ulf one. Holding one hand to his side, he winced. Blood was on his lips. He was weak. He hadn't broken anything for years. "You are going to die here," Walker said calmly, walking toward the emissary, trying to disguise the pain he felt. The Rasium sneered at the huge warrior, spitting at him and moving closer, leaning toward him. "If I do, I will be remade, but your line is ended. Guard," he hissed, the conviction of his feeling coming through coming through his false words. He moved closer to Walker, continuing, "We have already won. We found your last hope, and by now it is done, and he is ours." Walker's jaw clenched. Did they really already have the prince? Is that why the emissary hadn't left yet? The emissary felt he struck a chord, for he saw the doubt on Walker's face. This was his moment. My race is superior, he yelled, and then lunged. The move was fast. He thrust his quicksilver blade out toward Walker's throat. Walker caught the quick but telegraph strike in one hand, and the emissary's neck in the other. He had moved so fast, the emissary didn't realize what had happened. Not the lowest hope! Obi-Wan, you're my only hope! Yeah, so quick recap. Purple aliens tried to take over the planet. The planet had fought dragons before the aliens. While they were fighting the aliens, they decided to team up temporarily to fight the dragons that came back. After they put the dragons back in their place, the purple aliens decide that they're not happy in the uneasy detente, and they want to take over the planet. And this Spartan paladin is the last of the guard that watched the king, who was a very powerful warlock who could control teleporting magic technology. And he was assassinated, and the prince is the only one left who has the power to unlock this wormhole technology, and that's why they want him. So the paladin is trying to reach the prince. Their only hope. Okay, who do we have? We got a mix. Right. These dudes. Okay, so I'm gonna give you guys killing fields to take out most of these dudes. Good luck. Doing well. Our numbers are still pretty high. And it is only the 4th dungeon, so I still don't like how we got scaled up. Yay! We have one. Got 6 keys. I hope you guys also get 6 keys. And the max for me is 10 keys. And sometimes, even though I'm on dungeon runs with other people like Tokozuna and Hooks, it feels like the keys reset and they stop being 10 and they start going back to 2. Okay, you got 5 keys. Good. Get 5 keys. Get up there. I'm at 81 keys because I redeemed the ferry, which was 300. I have to work my way up to 200 again to start getting scrolls. Okay, I need to go and redeem healing quests that you guys helped me get. Oh, and the kills. So, yay me. And thank you. Get some. And that. And I think the store has reset. So let me go get more scrolls at the store. I think it should have reset right around the time I started streaming. So if you have enough gold, you can buy scrolls to level up your warriors, your other units. Getting those fairy scrolls because I haven't used my fairy, so right now it's just the scrolls that are leveling her up. And what are we working towards with all these keys? So I prioritize unlocking the fairy. So I unlocked the Evil Queen Epic Fairy for 300. And she's a transformer too. Pretty cool. If you have level 30s and you want to remove their souls and spawn, make sure you have another lower level unit before you sacrifice your level 30s. You can get the soul vessel to hold those souls. I leave this for last because I'm still leveling up my 30s, at least on my player account. I'm not quite ready to sacrifice minus tribute yet. So right now I'm just working for the scrolls, the 10 scrolls for each of the legendaries that we have. So once I get those, if I get them all, at least for the captain account, I'll go back and get the soul vessel. But if you're not going to be likely to get that many keys, I recommend buying the fairy chest for 10 a piece, and you're going to get fairy scrolls and gold and tokens as well, I believe, for the campaign. Oh, and chance for fairy skins as well. Okay. Up my paladin. Okay. Strawberry paladin. She is cute, but she is fierce. It's just the one. I don't think I have any captain spells to level up. No, I don't. Okay, I can go back and enter the dungeon. Okay, we need to collect our boon. We have flames, we have skeletons, we've leveled up, and we got epics. Sky demons. Flying units are untargetable. If they have not attacked within the last 10 seconds. Soul penetration. This one's very important. Archer attacks and plant a soul. When the enemy dies, an ally skeleton warrior is summoned. So we're gonna want ranged units to take care of this on the back end for us. And poison arrows. Archers attacks debuff enemies, dealing 10 damage every 5 seconds for 3 minutes. So I'm gonna go for the skeletons, that way if we die, you guys get a warrior skeleton upon death, but our ranged units can also yield us some skeletons too. Alright, boss battle. So if you have your potions ready, let's use them. And then remember, we have the Giant's Brute, so you get 30% more damage on epics as well. Eep. These guys are scary. Oh, I get to place barbarians again. Because my Templar is exhausted. Okay, so melee will do it. This guy, Conjurer, I think he's range. Okay. Melee, rogues, and this guy needs armored. Okay, so something of everything. Oh, and these guys too. Oh yes, Obi-Wan, you're my only hope. Perhaps this is what awaits your return, came the simple reply before Walker collapsed the emissary's windpipe with a single squeeze of his hand, dropping the alien to the floor. Walker let out a breath. He paused, looking at the Rasium's wrist. On it was a gold bracelet with what looked like some type of clock mechanism. An inner light shone inside. The jumper, he thought. Groaning, he bent down, unbuckling the device from the wrist of his fallen enemy. He looked it over and tapped the runes in quick succession. They glowed. Good, he said aloud. If he could get to the prince in time, he might be able to save the boy. He turned the jumper off, tucking it in one of his belt pouches. Holding his side, he limped toward the broken doors. The cold wind blew in. He was pale. The power of the Magnus had drained him of all vitality, and Walker knew he had to release it. His marks were gone, and a bluish essence of light left his body, pulsing outward and dissipating back into the rock. He grunted as it passed by his ribs, starting the mending process before flowing out with the rest. He was dizzy and fell to a knee. His world swam as he collapsed to the floor. Light, beautiful light, and a cool breeze was what he felt. Walker was standing with his brothers at arms. He had just heard a speech. The men around him had their arms in the air. He was in his muscled Zeus Mark I Spartan armor, holding a weapon. Looking to his left, he saw one of his brothers smiling, a dark-skinned man with golden eyes. He clapped Walker on his armored shoulder and said something. It was indiscernible. Walker couldn't hear him. Free. What did you say? Walker had tried to ask. The man spoke again. He smiled. They had been in a battle. The sun started to fade. His vision blurred, and it started to get dark and cold. Walker awoke with a start. He didn't know how long he had been out. He was cold, and he ached. His ribs, most of all. Broke quite a few of them. He felt tired and didn't think he could move. He was very stiff. Slowly he contracted his muscles, and after a few seconds he tried to move. Wobbling slightly, he was able to get to all fours. Then after a minute or so he stood, taking in his surroundings. He was just inside the large bent runic doors. The snow had continued to fall, and the insides of the huge doors were under a sheen of white. He made his way toward them, walking better with each step. Some of the prisoners below must have been freed, for he could hear cheering and sporadic gunshots. The prisoners were overrunning the remaining jailers. He surveyed the wreckage. Only the original Ulth-1 architecture still held, as it was arcanium-laced. Ironically, the words that used to keep others out let him in and had empowered him to destroy the place. Ulth-1 can build them, he thought. He studied the huge, runic, and half-hinged doors, looking at the scope of ruin before him. The munitions and ammo caches had done more damage than he had realized. A fitting tombstone for a centuries-old place of pain and torture, he thought as he walked over the threshold to the road leading out to its entrance. He stopped outside the doors and looked off at the blackness down in the valley. The snow was still falling, gently landing on his shoulders. He was warmer now that he was moving, but he knew he would be getting cold fast, and he was still tender from the wounds he suffered. All right. this dude was range, so yeah, thank you for putting down some stronghold. A little difficult to get them when they're all spread out like this, so we're gonna have to pick our battles over here. Alright, good luck everybody. Numbers are good. Yay! And we got 7 keys for this one. Awesome. Alright, did I achieve anything? No, not yet. Right. Healing Bloom. When healers heal a unit, that unit gains 50% more healing for 6 seconds. Stocks up to 4 times. Or Dreamy Wardens. Healers have 100% reduced speed, but can heal from any range with faster projectiles. Ooh, that's handy. But I'm still not a fan of the healers not moving anywhere. Although, now that I'm not playing solo, they actually do move. Bombardment. Bombers get 50% attack speed. If nearby bombers, they get 1 increased AoE. I don't know. Do we want stacked healing, or do we want healing from any ranged? I think I'm gonna go for the stacked healing. Yes. Hi, Scruffy. Yes, I'm still playing Stream Raiders. But I'm still on my old PC, or my old laptop, so to speak. I think I will save the new one for the new year. So new year, new laptop. I got through adding my OBS settings for the most part and connecting my Steam. There's still a few other things I need to add to it. It's not quite ready. We tested playing Terraria, which is kind of low-key. So it should be fine. We need to test Minecraft, because Minecraft is my usual resource hog. And then after that, Valheim. But the goal will be grounded eventually. Healing she's Scruffy. Did we not go over your earlier mistakes or faux pas in your Twitch Sings Youth with the that's what she said? Silly pigeon. Are you heading off to bed soon? I just saw this. I can't remember where I was. Oh, here we His breath was misting in the early morning air, and he closed his eyes, realizing how weak he really was. Walker flexed the fingers of his injured arm. The use of his power had drained him, and he still needed to rest. He hadn't used that much power since the Thermic War. Yeah, it's looking like it might not be in our favor, Fiendish, and hello. But we shall do our best. I'm not a fan of them being spread out like that. But you know, it's what we get. We do well, and we get more enemies. You get punished with more work, which is very common in the workplace as it is. Okay, well, we're gonna go with the you were hacked. We'll take that. Infinite range is not bad, I guess. And we have the implanting a soul. So that reminds me. If you guys got it, let's add some ranged units for the last ones if you can add them. It's something. Oh, for their unit as well, yeah. Well, we might be taking them out, but even if we take out their unit and they take us out, remember, we have skeletons upon death, and they have skeletons when they die. That will save us. Cross our fingers. Alright, Scruffy. He sat down for a moment, listening to the perfect stillness. He bent over and took a handful of snow, then bit it and swallowed. His mouth was dry. The snow tasted good. He needed water after the ordeal his body had just been through. There was no noise except for the last rumblings of the rocks behind him inside, and the wind gusting through his hair and beard. He sat on some rubble, and calmness washed over him. Glancing up, he saw the day's first light was coming. The sun was about to crest the mountains to the east of him. The sun wouldn't warm him much, though, and he poked at his clothes, noticing the holes and tears. He looked around for something to wear, glancing at the rubble inside the exploded mountain face. All around him was broken armor, covered by rocks and dead legionnaires. A flapping caught his eye by the entrance under one of the large golden runes. Walker stood and walked over to what looked like an officer. The body was face down on the floor, just inside the large opening of the prison. He was wearing a cloak that had been caught on a piece of rebar, like a pole jutting from the wall, the wind blowing it back and forth. My cloak! He walked over and looked down at the man who wore it, realizing it was the commander of the force that had originally fought and captured him. Well, that's convenient, he thought, as he pulled the man from the rubble. The commander had taken his things earlier when they had brought him here. He remembered him briefly before going unconscious. He checked for a pulse and felt nothing. He set the man's head down carefully and unlatched the cloak, unhooking it from the rebar and almost tripping as he did. He was still so weak, and grabbed the bar to steady himself. A cool wind hit him in the face. Alright, I'm gonna do the high ground, simply because we need all the help we can get, and if we've got infinite range, then let's just hope it's enough for the few range we have. I think we have 1, 2, 3, 4. And the bomber. Thank you for putting that bomber down. Right. Let's cross our fingers that we don't die too much too quickly. Good luck. Okay, we're still evenly matched, and I'm gonna attribute that to the skeletons. And they're going down. Can we do it? 19 to 4. Look at you with the most kills, fiendish. Aren't those little skellies so cute? Get that mana core. That's how we do it, baby. 8 keys a bunch. GG's indeed. Alright. Continue in place. My next barbarian. GG, Sandy boy. Thank you for helping. Let's see. Tanks deal 10 damage to nearby enemies. Slow move and attack speed by 25. 4 seconds every 3 seconds. All units gain 5 more attack speed. Dagger assassin units' movement speed and attack speed is increased by 10. Yeah, I'm happy how that went, Fiendish. I mean, I'm gonna say it. It's like these skeletons. Upon death and implanting skeletons, I think that was a very lucky combination. Movement and attack speed. I'm gonna go for damage on this one. Yeah, more DPS. Yes. So I put down the vibe, which is the peace sign hands. That's what it's called. Which means you can put anything there. But if I put down specific units, either armored, melee, ranged, you know, whatever, then you should try to put one of those units down. So I think you only have warrior, tank, and archer when you start out. So these ones get targeted by warriors, rogues, butlers, tanks, and so you can pretty much put anything down. I'm gonna vibe things out. Still need the barbarian, right? Yeah. Okay. Last barbarian. I'll collect after the battle is done. So you guys can put whatever wherever, because it's a mixed bag of pretty much everything will take these guys out. Walker held the cloak and continued looking around for something more to wear. Going back inside, he found a fine chainmail upper hauberk, a leather shoulder holster with pouches that fit over the mail, and a fur-lined coat with missing sleeves. He also found a newer pair of steel-toed boots that one of the smaller ogres had been wearing. They fit well enough, almost matching the ones he had. They would be good to keep the elements off. He found gauntlets, some ammo for the tri-shotgun that he strapped to his thigh, and a sizable sack of coins that the commander had on his waist. He picked up a long-bladed polearm that had been strewn in the blast. He looked it over, admiring its craftsmanship. Eldra or Elven, it had a small button on the side of the shaft. He pressed it, and the shaft shrank to a haft. He swung the weapon. It felt good. It balanced like a sword. Set it down with the other items and then dressed, sheathing the blade on his back strap when he had finished. The wind whipped a frosty cold on his face again, and he looked around, managing a small laugh at the destruction he had created. He walked back to the emissary and checked him, finding a broken comm that wouldn't turn on. However, the alien did have a few sealed papers with information. They had started an attack, though not the one he needed. Not exactly what Walker had hoped to find, but it did give him a place to start looking for the prince, and a hint of the attack planned against the Federation in the south, though the intel was old. Walker folded the papers, stuffing them into one of his pouches. He headed back to the doors and noticed a ration pouch by one of the soldiers. He hastily picked it up, opening it and smelling the contents. He hungrily wolfed down the dried meat and then did the same to another. After he ate most of the ration, he opened one of the utility pouches on his waist and took a pin from it. He then placed the remaining ration into it, latching its top. He held up the pin, studying it. He huffed a breath on it, rubbed it until it shined, and pinned it on his cloak. It flashed slightly as the light, the chevron of the Spartan paladins glimmering. He packed snow in his canteen, then left the carnage of the prison, walking out of the massive broken doors. The sun was coming up behind a fortress as he pulled the jumper from his pouch. "Time to go home," he said, as he walked into the falling snowflakes. With a flash, the labyrinthian portal opened. He stepped through and was gone. Scruffy. Yes, as I was reading it, I was conscious that this might sound somewhat suggestive, which you quickly picked up on. We've been having a "that's what she said" tone all day, so it's only appropriate. Loreland, outskirts of the Dragon Wastes, above the Federation of the Paladins, the southern flat Iron Mountains. Soldiers in burgundy cloaks checked the wreckage of the hovercraft, parts of it still in flames. The attack had been swift and deadly. They had lost 2 members of their party and 1 horse that was in the ship's hold. One of the soldiers walked up to a hooded figure. He was holding a device, studying it as he walked. "Commander," the soldier said. The cloaked figure did not move. She was thinking. "Commander," the soldier said again. Still nothing. "Tasha," he said, and she snapped out of her trance. "Yes," she turned to him, her face hidden in the shadow of her cloak. It was the Drunar. He held out the device. She took it, looking it over. Thunder boomed in the distance. It was gray and cloudy. The sick smell of wet mist was on the air. The rain had not started to fall yet, but it was about to come down hard. "Can it fly?" she asked, handing the device back. He shook his head no. "Let's get saddle done. We have a long ride to reach Royal. Villian needs to know about this. I hope our thief has had better luck." He nodded and turned away to get the others. She paused, sensing something. She sniffed the air, then looked around. The feeling was gone. She let out her breath. "Let's go," she yelled. "She will get a crew to get this mess. We will get a crew to get this mess." 100 yards away, a creature had watched from the tree line. It wore a dark cloak, the emblem of a ship, and a dragon on its chest. So that is the end of chapter 7. And to catch you up, Scruffy, if you weren't listening here when we picked up, so Walker has finally escaped the ice prison where he was being held. He destroyed everything, pretty much. And now he knows that the aliens know where the prince is, and the attack that was ordered, which the Partha were not anticipating, was indeed the dragons, who are back and who are now siding with the purple aliens, Cerasium. But now Walker has to find the prince, so we'll see when he does. Oh yeah, I woke up Saturday morning and Han was playing before dinner. So it was nice to get to see him for a bit. Alright, let's do a killing field. There's nobody down here, so let's go over here. Good luck. The enemies are higher number though. Okay, but they're evening out. Alright, we've cut them down by a third. Yay! And we get 9 keys. 9 is a good number. Oh yeah, I get my barbarian boon. Let me go collect that one. Alright, buffing and Templars for me. Buff you, man. No, buff you. Alright, let's see what we get in our boons this time. Phoenix Core. Explosive assassins are automatically revived for future battles if they have dealt damage. First Strike. Monks increase the range of nearby non-ranged units by 1. Or refined arrows. I think we had this one before. Ranged units have 15% more damage. You know I like the damage. Oh, panel. Yes. A few of the vampire slayers. Oh, you lovely, lovely man. Thank you. See, if it's not song lyrics or movie quotes, I guess it's, names of, TV shows that come to mind. I will go for the damage on the ranged unit. And it's boss battle, so if you have your potions handy, you can use them and you will get the potions for your epics regenerated. Now, I like to place on these near the green ones because you get skeleton upon death on the green crystals, on the earth crystals. So we already have the skeleton upon death, we have the ranged implantation. So maybe we don't need to if we have the skeleton upon death anyway. Let's try placing near the fire ones. Since we are the only one I really like from the earth crystals is the skeleton spawn, but we already have that as a boon anyway. Oh my god! Yeah, Scruffy, I said ranged implantation. I'm just setting them up for you. Alright. Chapter 8. Thoughts in the Sky. Anstone Castle, inside the fortress city of Anstone. So that tells me we're gonna finally deal with the dragons, because they've been spying on us. So I want to see some dragons, please. In fact, at LA Comic Con, Tommy actually showed an illustration of a dragon attacking a bullet train full of the aliens and the paladins. So I want to see me some cool dragons. Lincoln was late. He was supposed to have already met his uncle before his speech, but hadn't realized the time while he laughed with his friends. However, once his wrist strap went off, he knew what time it was and panicked. I gotta go. See ya, guys. He yelped as he jumped up, tripping over the equipment in his hurry to go. His friends laughed. Great, good job, Link, he thought, his cheeks flushing with embarrassment. Once he was out of sight, he ran. He ran from the barn as fast as he could, through the walkways and past the guards up to his uncle's study. He stopped only long enough to straighten his hair and grab a shirt from his room. He had noticed the lack of people in his way and was grateful. It had allowed him to make much better time. He was tucking his shirt as he rounded the tower corner, giving him a nice view. He looked over Anstone. It was a beautiful place. The outskirts of the city were quiet and dark, except for the lamps that had recently been lit. The homes and farms outside the fortress had their lights off, and the shops were closed up for the night. All were making ready for the party. He found it so peaceful and looked up at the stars. Lincoln smiled to himself. then started towards Matthias' study. The castle was a different story. The laughter and noise could be heard for miles. The tables were covered in food, ready for the feast. There was an enormous skewered hog by the big bonfire that was roasting in the middle of the square. Small sausages and pork loins were being handed to the people to try. The aromas of the succulent pork, beef loins, cakes, tarts, and other delicious foods were amazing. It was making the crowd hungry. It's making me hungry, and I already had dinner. The finest keggers and Warder wine merchants in the areas had brought their best stock too. They had tapped the kegs, and the place was erupting in fun and games. Children ran through the cobbled streets, and the older folks sat with pipes in their hands, for the men had come earlier, lighting the street lamps while the sun was setting. The low-lit lamps put the whole castle in a soft glow. Lincoln made it to his uncle's study and knocked on the door. "Come in, you're late," the commander said without looking up. "Sorry, Uncle," Lincoln replied. As he walked in, he saw his uncle looking down at his speech. Matthias was wearing his dress uniform, his many medals and awards displayed on his breast. "It's all right, boy," Matthias said, looking up at him over his glasses. "I understand the needs of youth." "Well, come here and tell me what you think," Matthias said, waving him over. Lincoln came to his side. "You look great," he said as he looked at his uncle's medals. Matthias wore officer's dress blues and had cleaned up his mustache and sideburns. He looked the part of a commander. "Well, thank you, and you as well," he pointed to Lincoln's untucked shirt. "Sarcastic much?" The boy smiled, tucking it back in. "Now read this," Matthias said, holding up his papers. Lincoln looked it over, reading a few lines and nodding. "Pretty good, but..." He paused. "But what?" Matthias asked. Lincoln smirked. "Let me help," he said, bending over. "I was hoping you would say that," Matthias replied. "I'll get us something to drink." After a few adjustments and some changes to punctuation, they were heading to the party. They walked on the upper bridge walkway that surveyed the revelry going on below them. Both had pints in their hands and were laughing as they walked down to join in the festivities. "I think that bit you added in the end will be it." "Thank you, Your Highness," Matthias said, making a slight bow to the boy. Lincoln stood tall with his hand on his hip. "Yes, I know. Thank you. Thank you," he sarcastically said back. Matthias sighed. "You're going to be a good king, you know." Timidness crossed Lincoln's face. "How do you know that?" he asked warily. Matthias pointed at his chest. "Because you have this, a good heart." Alright, let's go for speed on this one, because we're a little further away, but I'm hoping the fire crystal help you guys. Good luck. Numbers are looking good. But see, I think some of them were with the earth crystal, so they were respawning. But that mattered not. And we're back up to 10 keys. Awesome possum. Aerial Fiend. While a vampire flies, it empowers the next attack of nearby allies to do 500% more damage. Ooh. I like a good vampire fight. Glory of Victory. Melee units gain 50% damage. When epic melee units get a kill, they become invincible for 1 second. I am invincible! Expertise Armored. Armored units reduce the attack speed and damage of nearby enemies by 30%. I like the vampire one. But in the long run, you might need the melees, and if they're epic, you know, we can do the I am Mr. Invincible thing. Who wants to see epic vampires? Let's go for something fun. And I know it's gonna be 10th dungeon, so it's not gonna be a boss fight. Yeah, let's do the vampires. Warriors, rogues, armored and archer. Get me those vamps. Actually, yeah, because I'm gonna buff the heck out of you, especially if you guys give me more vamps. I'm gonna put down my Boobarella. Want an army. Vampires. Bloodsuckers with an attitude. The venerable commander looked up at the sky. Your father had it, and so did your brother Dominus. You have it too. I have it? Think so? Lincoln asked. Yes, my boy, you do, Tias replied. I have power too, Lincoln said matter-of-factly, enough to help our people. Matthias cocked his head and looked at him. Yes, yes you do. But you need the heart to wield it and the head to use it, he said, pointing to his chest and his temple. Matthias sat down on a small stone ledge not too far from the study. He patted his hand on the spot next to him for Lincoln to sit, and he did. Lincoln, your father and I sat looking at the sky many nights in awe of the stars and power that it must have taken to create them. Power is a very big thing. Who do you think had the most power of the races on our world? Lincoln thought for a moment. LOKs, or dragons, he said with a smile. Although the Spartans might be the ones since they are my favorite. Matthias replied, LOKs are powerful. like yourself, and I am partial to the Spartans, but only the dragons had ultimate power. Matthias held up his finger. Only they had it. The dragons used to be the masters of the sky and the ground. He took a drink from his pint before continuing. They used to be helpful to the people in the old days, before the fall, long ago. They were so amazing and so unique, he added with a sigh. But power corrupted them. Not all of them, not at first, but after time. Power has a way of turning and sometimes corrupting even the best. You like them, Uncle? Lincoln asked. No, but I respect the power they had and the power they lost, Matthias replied. But Uncle, it doesn't have to be that way. If one masters the power they have, they can make others do what is best. Matthias interrupted. That is what I mean, Link. That is what the dragons thought, and that's what the Razium think. Power has to be used not to make people do what you want, but to help them find what they need in themselves. The dragons turned evil because of their desire for more power. Same with the Razium, and they have already lost it once. There was a pause, and Matthias let what he said sink in. Do you understand what I'm saying? The Creator gave us power, gave you magic power. You can't use magic to unite us, but you can help us to unite ourselves. That, son, is great power. Lincoln nodded. Matthias grinned and took another sip of his pint. Lincoln heard footsteps and saw his friend Eric coming from the other tower over the bridge toward them. He perked up. Eric! Hello, Commander, he said to Matthias, then nodded to Link. Eric, how are the festivities? Matthias asked. Good, sir, but I think they are waiting on you, the brown-haired boy said. My uncle was telling me about dragons, Lincoln added. Really? Eric asked. Have you seen one, Commander? The old warrior stood with a grunt. That's the sound I make, not just Matthias, but that's the sound I make. Letting his age show as he stood. Oh yes, I've seen one. Bought one too. Both eyes got wide in awe. I'll tell you the story some other time. Now, though, I have a party to get to. You know you like the attention, Lincoln said. Yeah, thrilled. Now you boys go run along and stay out of trouble, Matthias said, chuckling. I have a speech to give and a date with some pork loin, the boys laughed. We will catch up later, the old commander said to Lincoln. Go have some fun, and watch me make a fool of myself during the speech. He shooed them off with his hand. Lincoln and Eric walked back across the bridge and down to the party, laughing as they went. Matthias watched them go. When he was alone, he looked at the sky and smiled. Little does he know that the sky is looking down back at him and it's not smiling. Right, that was the end of chapter 8, so that was a short chapter. We will start chapter 9 after the battle, and I think I will go probably for another half hour. So I think I'll make the next one a campaign one. And then we could get some solid half hour of reading. Although, even grinding, I haven't made that many keys, unfortunately. But hopefully you guys have an answer to get scrolls or fairy or whatever you're doing. Okay, good luck. and see you if you're still around and listening. I'm gonna switch to campaign for our last battle. So you should be able, yay, you should be able to put more than the 2 units you've been able to place on the dungeon ones. Okay, all units speed up 5% faster. Dagger assassin units damage and movement speed is increased 10%. Melee units had 10% more defense. I'm gonna give our dagger assassins more damage. Damage is good. Damage is always good. DPS for the win. Seriously? The whole time I ran the whole freaking battle and I didn't put it on there. I need a pro command. I need one of my mods to make a pro command. For crying out loud. See, it's almost 2 a.m. I'm falling asleep. So sorry. I'm not falling asleep, I'm tired. Lack of sleep will do that to me. I know, it's like no one said anything. No one said anything. I'm so bad. I'm so bad. I'm so sorry. You should take my captain stuff away. I need to do the counter. Like the dead counter and the pro counter. Alright. A pro would be called if I clicked on the battle right now before getting out to do campaign. Alright. Last battle. No, pro was me yesterday, Halbert, because I took a path that had both a token chest and a skin chest, and I still picked the wrong path, and I missed this skin chest. It was pointless. Okay. And of course, we're gonna end it hard. No, you know what? It wasn't me. I'm gonna blame the stream deck because I did press it, but I may not have pressed the button completely, so it didn't submerge all the way. Do I still have my Templar? Give you a Templar. Yes, okay, I can give you a Templar. Okay, so we can do warriors, some rogues. Okay, so just these 3. No ranged on this one. Misinput! Yes, that's definitely a misinput one. Did not do what I wanted it to do, but I meant for it to do it. channel. Yeah, I was wondering about that. It's like I saw you lurking in Scruffy's Alberts. I'm like, okay, either he's gone to bed already, or he didn't notice that I came on. So thankfully, tomorrow I don't have to get up at the ungodly hour of why am I awake to go paddling. Well, they're still paddling in the morning. I'm just not gonna go to it. We're doing an evening paddle for the holiday, so I'm bringing all of my LED rings and fairy lights, and we're gonna go out on the boat at 7 out in the marina. I don't think we can go out into the bay because it'll probably be rough waters, but at least we'll be paddling in the protected marina. And our boat gets all decorated with fairy lights, and we put fairy lights on our paddles, so it should be fun. The only downside to that is I will be paddling later at night when it's cold. Well, it's, you know, still cold when we get up early in the morning, but at least the warm eventually warms us up. Protected from sharks, not quite. Hello, pretty Kiki. How are you doing, darling? Did you sleep well? Did you party hardy? Are you gonna do yoga? Although, you know, they say that there's enough coming out of the bay that sharks don't actually need to come inside the bay, because, like, at the mouth where the Golden Gate Bridge is, they have enough sustenance coming out. But I still see like fishermen, they're still pulling out blue sharks. You know, it's like baby sharks, or like baby like sometimes I want to say tiger sharks or leopard sharks, the tiny ones that come in, but definitely blues. Like, I think that's just the ones that are spawning and growing, but they're not like actively hunting. But I'm still not going inside and taking a dip anywhere. Yeah, no sharks. But, you know, that's the downside with water sports. Okay, I'm gonna hit the button. I'm gonna wait to see that the scene actually changed. Oh, so because of the lag, there we go. It changed this time. Remind me, please. Like, spam the caps so I can see if it didn't actually change it for the last battle. Alright, so we'll do a little bit of chapter 9. As much as we can get done. Is the music too loud? Can you hear me? It's very loud in my ear, but sometimes I hear it on stream and it's pretty low. Not yet, Pan. Not yet. Attendez. Wait. Warte. Yell at me in 23 minutes. Chapter 9, Home. Northwestern Province, the palace city of Sparta, Laconia, the ex-capital and once home to King Agesilaus. The portal sphere opened with a swirling flash of multicolored, etheric light. Walker emerged from its smooth surface, snow covering his massive cloaked shoulders, and his hood pulled low over his face. He paused and listened, then pulled back his hood cautiously, observing his surroundings while he gained his bearings. Rain was all he could hear. He had arrived in a thickly wooded area. the smell of pine filling the air. He gazed upon the thick canopy of the forest. From what he could tell, it must have been later in the afternoon, but with the gray clouds and light rain, there was no definite answer. After all, it was always gray and raining in the northwest. At least, that's what they told everybody. After he was sure his arrival had gone unnoticed, he checked his jumper, the strange wrist-mounted device he had taken from the Razium emissary. The device allowed the wearer to make micro-jumps using the labyrinthian gates without the use of arcane abilities. Seeing as how the labyrinthian couldn't be opened with full strength, these devices were rare and valuable, which is why Walker needed one so badly. He had been trained on the inner workings of the jumper and could send it on slightly different routes, like a labyrinthian key, though not nearly as powerful. Only a few had the knowledge to use jumpers, much less make them, and those people were very hard to come by, especially now. Most Arcanium craftsmen had been taken or killed by the Razium, used for their knowledge of the metal, then discarded like trash. Many people he knew had died for the secret of the Arcanium runes. The ones that hadn't had been given safe haven in the White Tower and were under the protection of the Council. Walker pulled papers from a belt pouch compartment while he studied his surroundings. He was back on Ultima Thule in the northwest corner of the Laconia province, close to the city of Sparta. Walker frowned. He was losing time and needed answers. He looked at the papers he had taken from the emissary. Reading them, he had discovered that the king's youngest son had been located and that the Razium were going to move against the young prince. He also knew they had attacked the Federation in the east, keeping the battle a stalemate to hide their true intentions. The Razium didn't want the governors of the Federation uniting under the prince. He was rumored to be a LOK powerful enough to open and control the Labyrinthian again. If they were able to capture him, use him to unlock the Labyrinthian, the Sage's masters might not be able to be stopped. They could attack from anywhere, at any time. And with the technology they still possessed, nothing could combat them. Walker didn't know where or how to find the prince, but he knew a man who might, if he could find him. Pulling his hood up, he started towards Sparta. The ex-capital was a huge metropolis, and many claimed the king's palace in the middle of it was the grandest palace ever constructed. Most thought that the walls of the fortress and the mountainous landscape couldn't be penetrated by any normal army. The magical defenses of the mighty palace were deemed untouchable even by the LOK wizards. That left a mystery as to how the Razium had been able to occupy the fortress to assassinate the king. To Walker's knowledge, it hadn't been uncovered why or how the Razium had been able to gain access, only that they had. On that night, they had almost put the royal line to an end. Walker tried to dismiss the dark thoughts, for he needed to stay focused. He was glad to be home and started to take in the scenery laid out before him. The look and smell of the trees all around him brought back memories of his youth. He and his friends would run through the forest as children. It smelled so fresh here. He made his way through the thick main paved road that led through the mountains. As he studied the scenery, he noticed it was very similar to how he remembered it during its time as the capital. The area had been slightly rebuilt, the watchtowers and small outer walls somewhat bigger than he. It seemed that most of the roadways, buildings, and walls on its outskirts had been refurbished. Smoke was coming from the refineries over the edges of the trees and it made him reminisce. When he was younger, he would ride his horse on this very road to the city gates. He loved when he was close to the fortress, riding through the gates on a cold day, the smells of Pantheon Square engulfing him as he went to the market. When he smelled those smells, he knew he was home. In his youth, it had been one of his favorite spots to mess around with his friends. He was thinking about those days as he was rounding the bend, remembering the way the city looked from this spot on a sunny day. Nothing could beat the view when the sun came over the mountains and hit the walls of the city. The huge metropolis that was Sparta was built into the mountains with a carved spaceport and snow-covered caps of the Laconian mountains behind it. To see its grandeur in the morning sun was one of the things Walker had truly missed. The top of the main peak the city was constructed on had been leveled by Dwarger and Ulthuan engineers, working with Sparta's own green artificers. They had been able to create towers and walls of such structure and magnitude that some of the designs couldn't be duplicated even with the greatest Rasium technology. The structures boggled the mind in complexity. Sparta was a symbol of what the king stood for. It stood for hope, that anything could be achieved. Runes of protection were inscribed on the ramparts and any other defensible position, making the mystery of the Rasium attack even stranger. They never should have been able to breach the walls by magic or technology. Sparta's strionic fields had been the most advanced, save for those on the largest of the Rasium cruisers. With the way the city had been constructed, it should have been sealed to all intruders. It was an amazing achievement. Usually it had airships flying over the walls, with goods or dignitaries to see the king and banners flying high for some festival or ceremony. Walker remembered when he was a guard there how they would land the airships on the king's view, showing off for the guests in grand displays of aeronautics. The king's view was the large landing that jutted from the throne room, 200-yard span that allowed the king to walk out and greet his guests as they landed. He was able to look out on the city below as well. It was where rulers of the Federation were giving titles, and every elected governor had celebrated their inauguration. Even below the king's view, the inner courtyard was amazing. The walkways around its base had been lined with the statues of the greatest heroes and scholars of the Federation, all in perfect likeness of the people they represented. Every block had been perfectly laid, a breathtaking aspect of the architecture. Walker remembered how wonderful it looked every time he saw it. He couldn't wait to see those walls. He rounded the bend at the scenic lookout and stopped dead in his tracks. A look of horror fell over his face. He was in shock. He had come around the pass thinking he would see the once amazing metropolis, a huge palace behind its walls. There was the city, amazing as always, but at the palace there were only ruins. The jewel of the Northwest had truly fallen. His heart sank. He hadn't realized it had been so bad. He had heard the rumors, but to see a once untouchable, majestic palace in such disrepair was heartbreaking. He didn't have the word. He just stared. The city's huge buildings and towers reached into the sky like the great titans they still were. Behind them had stood the king's palace, also known as the Lion's Den of Sparta, the greatest structure that had been built at the time. Now there was only a hollow ruin. Walker stared blank-faced, clenching his jaw, for the place he as home was now a blackened husk. He took his field glasses from his belt and looked through them to study the palace. Some of the towers still had holes in them, and the colonnades statues. Some of the bridges had been toppled. It was a place of war and death. The banners were not flying, and it seemed that no one had lived in the massive palace for years. The city around it seemed to be flourishing, lights twinkling in the gray gloom. The palace itself was a dark, silent thing, a shell of its former glory, like a shadow that wanted to be forgotten. It stood only to haunt the people that still lived under its dark door, a reminder of the events and tragedy of one of the nation's darkest times, the Blood Night. He hurt thinking of the name, and he felt the guilt for not being there by the king's side. That night was a tragedy, and the pain it caused is still being felt to this day. He should have been able to make it back, he thought, as he continued walking, trying to get his head right. He had his mission. That was what mattered now. So Walker was not with the king when he went on his peace treaty subterfuge. That's why he doesn't know how they were able to get in. And I think from the previous chapter, the enemy kind of just appeared. Not just that they were, waiting, but I don't know, I have a feeling that this first time mentioned brother, Dominus, would have the blood ties and maybe the power of a LOK, and maybe had betrayed them and guided them through the Labyrinthium to come in and enact their treachery. That's one reason that they might have been able to get in. Sorry, I need a little bit of water to make the last 9 minutes before the battle be able to get through. I'm not crunching on anything scruffy, so I'm not gonna choke like 2 weeks ago when I was reading during my lunch breaks. Seeing the palace like it was put him in a bad mood. So as he got closer, he could make out some small repairs. Oh, did you put your fairy down? I think I used it on a dungeon. But I wasn't in stream to watch to see how it's working. Yes, Stress has one. Oh, you had the dragon's playboard. Yeah, we'll see. I promise. Cross my heart. I will not start the battle until I see it on the other screen. Oh, and you put down the Boobarella on grayscale. Nice. Did you also put down? Oh, you put down the pineapple buster. That's so cute. We can be matchy. If I put one of those down at some point. All right, 7 minutes. Mostly Patrick, although it seemed as if it might be inhabited. After all, his stomach hurt, then growled. He was famished. The rations he had found had run out hours ago. He needed to find some food. It was the busiest time of day for Sparta. Afternoon crowds in for trade, shipping, and business as usual. It was also a perfect time of day to try to get in unseen, or as unseen as a man his size could. Walker had made his way down the pass, mingling with the crowd to get through the guarded checkpoint that led to the bridges that granted access into the city. There were 3 main bridges, monstrous things that led down from the mountain passes over the chasm into the main city gates. The bridges tied the mountain and massive city together in a spider's web of steel, iron, and concrete. Walker had made it through the press and stood at the main entry to King's Gate, or Lion's Gate, as the king's symbol was the lion, hence the lion's den. It was covered in travelers, steam cars, and carriages moving to and from the city. He looked both ways at the traffic, finding his spot, then stepped round one of the newer-looking motor steam cars as he walked to the mouth of the gate. The bridge was enormous. He had forgotten how big it really was. The Bull Gate was the second of the 3. It led in from the harbor, Sound as it was known. Okay, there is... You may not know this, but I know this. Tommy lives in Seattle. So the fact that he set Sparta in the Northwest, and then you're calling it the Sound, and he wants to play Walker in the movie to be made. Sorry, I can't stop. I had to stop and giggle when I see this. He puts a lot of himself and his surroundings in this book. The Sound, as it was known, was a masterful dockyard. Sorry. Hold on, I need more water. Oh, the city he's calling Sparta is based on his hometown in Seattle. And it's not veiled at all. It's very obvious with his descriptors. The Sound, as it was known, was a masterful dockyard built in the huge chasm behind the city. The chasm led to the fjords, protecting the rear of the inlet and leading out to the sea. The fjords were always garrisoned and had long guns to protect its borders from pirates, which is why it was one of the best harbors in the Federation. It was safe. It was called the Sound on account of the noise the echoes of the fjords created. The Sound wasn't visible on an overcast day like today, as the fog had rolled in. Normally, one could see the tops of the loaders, cranes, and elevators that were built into the mountain chasm. These amazing devices would lift and lower goods from the city above the ships at anchor below. The system was so ingenious that it could lift the ships themselves, pulling them from the water for services and repairs. The cranes would take them out of the water, pulling them up until another lift would slide them into docking yards built in the chasm's face itself. The Bull Gate was the best way to travel from the port area into the city. Eagle's Landing was the third of the large bridges. It extended from the landing platforms, where large zeppelins, biplanes, and other air vessels docked, and it led to the public transportation depots. The landing area itself had recently been enlarged, and Walker thought it looked close to being finished, with all the construction and steam equipment arrayed around it. Walker stood in front of Lion's Gate, looking up at the large carved lion head statues and support beams that held it aloft. The bridge itself was 90 feet wide and a little over 1,000 feet long, with suspension supports in the middle that reached to around 400 feet at the highest point. Though it wasn't as spectacular as the Golden Bridge leading to the White City. Oh, come frickin' on. Really? Now San Francisco and the White City and the Golden Bridge? Sorry. Though it wasn't as spectacular as the Golden Bridge leading to the White City, it was truly a work of genius, and an amazing miniature version of the floating walkway nonetheless. The green artificers built it should be proud. Walker rubbed the cornerstone as he walked by, the chevron perforated on its sides, symbolizing the home of the Spartan paladins. He crossed the gate bridge, and as he approached the entrance of the city, he stopped. Looking up at the huge golden lion head that loomed over it, he grinned. Home, he thought, and his heart quickened. It was surreal. People passed him as if there was nothing special about this place. No one said anything to him for blocking the walkway, but he did get some stares. He watched the people pass and then looked back to the lion head. He had walked through this gate before with his soldiers, his brothers. He studied it, the lampposts and their ornately crafted light fixtures that led through the walls, lighting the way into the city. How many times have I come through this gate, he wondered. He shook his head and made his way toward the massive steel and arcanium-laced double doors that led through the walls and into downtown. The doors were opened as they usually were for traders and visitors to come through. However, they were so big that they had to be pulled back with hydraulics and steam machines, another testament to the green artificers' ingenuity when they built them. Each of them had a large golden rune of protection inscribed in its center, and it was said that when the mechanism was locked, the doors could be opened only by a master of the Tempest magic. After coming to the doors that led under the walls, Walker realized he hadn't been stopped or checked since the main gate. That could have been because there were not many soldiers here, and only the local police garrison protected the city. Not that there was much to protect against, as the war was still in the east, and they still had a trained guard here if needed. Alright, I'm going to call it there for the middle of chapter 9. We're at page 90. Checking to see the end pages. Around 350 or so. So we're a little bit over a quarter of the book. Not too bad.